Hey everyone, welcome to Red Men TV. It is the match build-up show, yes. Liverpool versus Newcastle, Saturday, 8 p.m. at Anfield. I'm Steve Hood, delighted to be joined by John Reid and by Chris Coughlin for this one, as we look ahead to the big game between the Reds and the Magpies. Thanks very much for coming in, gents. Much appreciated. Let's start, John, by talking about Newcastle. They've had it's kind of been a similar-ish season to Liverpool, albeit with obviously slightly less expectations on Newcastle, where I reckon if you asked them, I'd say 9th in the league. They would say they're probably underperforming in the league. They've had a decent crack at Europe. They've had a good couple of results. I know they didn't quite make the top 8 in the end, but they've been okay. And then their away Premier League form has been dreadful. They've had 2 wins on the road all season in the league. I think it's Burnley and Everton. It's a strange one, this, because they haven't quite probably kicked on as much as they wanted to. Obviously, they had issues in the summer. They lost their best player. We know that. We signed them. But it hasn't quite gone to plan for Eddie Howe. And I think Newcastle, if you asked them hand on heart, they probably would expect to be closer to that top 4 race than they are to the middle of the table.
Yeah, I think it must be really frustrating for them as a fan base to see sort of like all the things they've done, and then like you think sort of obviously like winning a trophy and stuff and sort of getting that monkey off your back, that would be like sort of the definitive next step. And like obviously other than Isak, like they've managed to keep most of that squad together, you know, in terms of the lads who've brought them to the dance, if you like. So it must be such a difficult thing as well, because it's like, I think the games I have seen of them, like, you know, they've been okay. Like, I wouldn't say they've been spectacular. I've seen Newcastle teams under Eddie Howe actually be like really, really, like, you know, from foot aggressive, like really fluid football. But they've looked okay, and I think it's just probably, you know, symptomatic of the league. It's sort of like where we're at the minute in terms of like the competition and stuff. Like, you know, that no team necessarily like is really, really like sort of looking great. I mean, for me, like even Arsenal at the top of the league, you know, are looking efficient, but they're not looking fluid. But then I suppose obviously, you know, you look at sort of how the teams have all done sort of in Europe in terms of where they finished and all that. Clearly it's a competitive league, clearly it's a strong league, so it must be hard. And I think, like, you know, I don't want to speak for Newcastle fans, obviously, because, you know, let them speak about their own club, but like they took like a lot of big steps if you look at them now compared to maybe 5 years ago, like, you know, off the back of like getting relegated and coming back into the division. But I think probably a lot of people thought maybe that they would, particularly given the way the league season's gone, obviously with us dropping off and all the stuff going on at Chelsea, that maybe they might have tried to have a bit of a push for top 4. I suppose there is the slight mitigation, I guess, of sort of like, you know, they've lost some players to AFCON and stuff, and, you know, trying to develop a relationship and an understanding when you've lost your top striker, and then get the guy you've got in to replace him goes away for 3 or 4 weeks. Obviously, it's quite difficult. So
it's one of them as well, Chris. But to be fair to them, like the other side is they are only. I mean, they finished 5th. They got into the Champions League by finishing 5th last year. Yeah. They are only 4 points off 5th. They're in a cup semi-final now. They've got it all to do because they lost 2-0 at home. They got through in just about in the FA Cup. I think they beat Bournemouth on penalties. They're still very much in the European Cup as well. They've got a playoff to get through. So it's one of them where actually league form they probably would expect to be a little bit higher, but they're not miles off it. And they like I say, they're doing all right. They've done all right to the cups as well. It's been just a really mixed bag. I don't know quite what the expectations were. I suppose the biggest negative for them would just be that away form. You know, a couple more points on the road, and they've had some disappointing results on the road. You know, that's where all of a sudden you are very much. You're having almost a really good season. The margins are so fine.
Yeah, I think as a whole they are far better than the away form would suggest. It's funny with Newcastle in that they do seem to go from one extreme to the other almost season after season. They were in the Champions League, then couldn't cope with the Champions League and the Premier League, didn't play in Europe altogether, then got back into the Champions League, and again they've kind of reverted back to that, maybe not really being able to cope with European competition and the Premier League at the same time. Because with Newcastle as well, after a long time out of Europe, they just jumped straight into the Champions League as opposed to maybe a gradual Conference League, Europa League journey and just going straight into the Champions League, which of course is where they want to be, especially with the money that they've spent, or the money that they're able to spend as well with the owners. So there is a lot of threat. I think Voltemada, for example, one that jumps out, he started so well, hasn't quite hit those heights recently, but where he hasn't filled in, Wissa actually has provided a few goals as well. And you mentioned that he obviously had a very similar situation to Isak in the summer when he just totally went on strike. And then the difference was when Isak, even though he has, of course has still had injury problems, Jon Dahl Tomasson then didn't play him for Sweden, whereas DR Congo manager, just chucked him straight back in, and then he got injured, and then he was out for about 2-3 months. So Newcastle have had their own issues in that regard. I'm sure we'll touch on a few in a moment, but obviously last year, there was, as opposed to 2024 as opposed to 2025, there was the whole Anthony Gordon saga, and that didn't come to fruition. And he is one that has struggled domestically, but in the Champions League, he's absolutely flown. I don't know whether you guys heard his quotes in the week about the comparison between the Premier League and the Champions League. He said effectively the Premier League is a lot more kind of physical. It's like a basketball game, whereas he sees the Champions League as actual proper football. So I do wonder if this week or this weekend, how much he's kind of looking forward to the game in those regards to those kind of quotes.
Yeah, he's very much in the Arne Slot camp. He prefers playing in Europe than the Premier League. Injury-wise as well, it's worth mentioning before we look about the Newcastle team in particular. They've got a few, and some of them are out, some are definitely out. So, for example, they've lost Fabian Schär again. He's out injured, and he's going to.
I think he's probably moving towards the end. I think in Newcastle really. He's another big injury for him. Yeah. Probably months. He'll do well really to get back in before the end of the season. You'd think he'll do well. He's done his ankle/foot. Livramento again, looking at months, which is a shame for him because he's a very good player. And then Joe Linton, he's out for a while. The manager said today he's going to be out for a few weeks. They're hoping. Rather than anything else. Kraft's out as well, and then Bruno Guimaraes is a touch and go. They'll wait and see. So one of the strengths of Newcastle, and I thought we all look back at that, obviously the League Cup final, John, obviously, the highlights go to, Jan Bain and Isak, but actually it was their midfield that really caused Liverpool problems. It's a very powerful midfield, but it's also very technical as well. It's almost certain no Joe Linton, and then Bruno being out, that's a huge worry for Newcastle. They have got a little bit of depth in midfield, but it's nowhere near as strong. So all of a sudden, if you take those two out of that three alongside Tonali, it's a much different team. Again, whether they take the risk or they save Bruno for bigger things to come down the line, again, that playoff's not that far away, and that's a huge one for them. But no Joe Linton and potentially no Bruno would be a big blow for them.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, Guimaraes especially, he's such a Rolls Royce of a footballer, and they haven't really got anybody who sort of offers what he offers. And I know like there's that stat sort of flying around that they've only won, I think it's like 2 or 3 games, isn't it, where he hasn't played, kind of thing. It's like a really mad statistic, but I don't know. I think how what really did for me with how I think in terms of like how he manages is when they had the final, and obviously we played them sort of a few weeks before last season in the league and won quite comfortably, and then we played them in the final and he played a completely different team. I think he's a little bit small C conservative in that respect, that he knows that sort of he's not going to be defined by like singular games. He's going to be defined by sort of like the season and goals, and sort of like, if we finish 5th or 6th or whatever in the league but have won a cup kind of thing, and then that's much more impactful for the club than it is than me getting 4th place and we don't win anything. So I think he'd probably err slightly on the side of caution with it, because like I say, I think Guimaraes is such a massive player for them, like even more so than the strikers and stuff. He's the one who makes everything tick and fit together. With some of the other stuff they've got, I don't quite know in terms of like Joe Linton and stuff. I mean, as you say, sort of that midfield is very much marked, I think, by its physicality, which worries me, to be honest. If they were all fit, I'd be really worried about this game in terms of like our ability to compete with them. The fact that some of them are either going to be starting from the bench, maybe in Bruno's case, or absent entirely, is a big plus for us. But they've still got lads in other areas. I think that can hurt us. Newcastle, the physical in midfield, but the physical throughout that team, they're all massive. Set plays, that kind of thing.
Joe Linton in the final was big, wasn't he? Just because the amount of feathers that he ruffled.
Oh, definitely.
They just get about as well. Yeah. It'll be interesting, Chris, to see what he does. Because again, in midweek, he played Bain, Botman and Tiori. He almost went like back 3. It was like Hall and Miley were almost like wing-backish. Without Joe Linton, definitely, I'm almost certainly with Bruno, we'll wait and see on that one, what the manager does. To not play him at all and then throw him straight back in Anfield would be tough. Maybe like Johnson off the bench. There's a world, given how Liverpool have struggled with back fives and the fact that they've just been to PSG and used a similar situation that Newcastle do that, it negates that. So I think it was Jacob Ramsey, wasn't it, who played in midfield alongside Tonali. They could absolutely do that. It was almost 3-4-3-ish. He changed his whole front line. It was Willock, Waltermada, Elanga. You wouldn't be surprised if Gordon, Visa, Harvey Barnes, for example, all get back in the mix as well. There is a world here, I think, where Eddie Howe goes back 3. A draw's a sound result, I think, for Newcastle at Anfield. And that's one way negating. You lose that physicality, but if you get Bale, Botman, and Tior on, you defending set pieces, attacking set pieces, but also Liverpool have struggled against back fives.
I do wonder though, and I hear what you're saying, but I know you said at the start of the show about kind of maybe lower expectations from Newcastle. I look at Geordies and I think they want the world all the time, to be honest. And I'm looking at this in terms of I'm expecting Trippier to come back in my head with the team use that you've just told me. I'm thinking Pope in goal, Trippier, Thiaw, Botman, Hall, which is a good back four. Miley then moves into midfield alongside Ramsey and Tonali, and then it's probably a Gordon, Barnes, Wissa / Voltemada.
Or Murphy as well. Murphy.
Well, he's still out. Murphy?
Jacob Murphy, he was on the bench the other day.
Okay. So it's because they're managing back from a hamstring. They're managing back from a hamstring injury, aren't they? So, he does love Murphy as well. Absolutely. How the season he had last year, absolutely. But I'm seeing a back four because I think how we'll look at almost what happened midweek with Liverpool and just totally disregard it, to be honest, because how much can you take from Liverpool in the week if you're Newcastle thinking about Liverpool and their Premier League form recently? If you're looking at any sort of fragility, again, you might just be forgetting Newcastle's away form altogether and just focusing on Liverpool here. And I think in terms of that, Trippier obviously with the set pieces for one, Hall bombs down that left-hand side. He's a fantastic left-back. He's someone that, in another world, I would quite like to see in a Liverpool shirt. But yeah, I get what you mean in terms of Joe being a good result for Newcastle, but I don't think that's the way Eddie Howe's going to be thinking.
I would be surprised based on the team that I know Chris just made. I'd be shocked if Dan Burn didn't play.
That is true.
I'd be shocked if Dan Burn didn't play for obvious. Again, if they watched anything of Liverpool recently, the long throws, which they had success with that at the early on in the season. It seems miles away now, that Real Ngamoa goal, John, but to get back into that game with set plays and Dan Burn being an absolute nuisance. We saw what he did in the League Cup final as well. I think the long ball up the pitch, again, Dan Burn was heavily involved. The long throw in for the goal. There's probably a world where that's why I'm thinking maybe the back five or whatever. I would be shocked if Newcastle come to Anfield and just try to properly outplay us, because teams who've done that have taken a bit of a beating. They are equally as adept, Newcastle, at the dark arts, the time wasting and the slowing the game down and the set plays and stuff. That's not criticism, it's just that's what they can do sometimes. It bit them on the arse once when Fabio Carvalho scored after midnight or something because the referee had that much time on, but they can equally make it that type of dog of a game. And if I was Eddie Howe, I would absolutely be doing that. I don't think I'd be rocking up to Anfield going, let's just play this nice footy, which they can do. I think it's probably in their interests to get that, try and drag Liverpool down into the mud and have a real scrap with them, because they are, as well as being a technical team, they're also very gritty and very scrappy. They've got a lot about them.
Yeah, I mean, it's on him, isn't it, obviously, as the coach, to sort of set that tone and set that agenda. And I think, being a bit of a spoiler, if you like, has worked really well for them, as you say. Like, they're not a team necessarily I would have thought he would have, like, having seen his Bournemouth team for years before he went to Newcastle. They were known for being very, very technical and very good, like to play good football, but not necessarily for being, as you say, sort of physical and sort of doing that side of it. And he's really brought that to that team, I think, which is great. I think, for me, sort of speaking to your point in terms of how they're going to play, I think a big thing for it is also the fact that it's like we're playing at home, and also it's a late kickoff. Like, the atmosphere of it, I think, will feel much more European, I think, rather than like a regular league game. And I think the fact that he knows they're going to be coming into that, and obviously we've just had the win midweek kind of thing, he'll be thinking we can't sort of let that push Liverpool forward kind of thing. Like, if we spoil that for sort of 15-20 minutes kind of thing and let the air out the balloon, then we've got much more of a foothold in the game, sort of post 20 minutes kind of thing. And I've seen him do it before. I've seen other managers do it before as well at Anfield. But that's entirely right out of his playbook, if you like, in terms of as Newcastle manager. And he's got all the right players to do it, as you say. And in terms of like comparing the teams, like, he's got sort of, I know that we were talking through the injuries just a minute ago, but he's got a bit more of the depth on the bench to be able to have sort of 2 or 3 lads and go, right, you're going to do me 70, and then I'm going to maybe take a Gordon off for a Barnes.
Well, what they've got, Chris, they've got the ability to change the whole front three. They have got a lot of attacking options. You know, it's either Voltemada or Visa will start, and the other one can come on. And then on both flanks, Barnes and Gordon. I've mentioned there earlier on as well, whether it be, you know, Murphy can absolutely play in there. They've got loads of lads in those attacking areas where he can, you know, if he wants to, you know, play the frustrating game and take it deep and then go to his bench and freshen it up. He's absolutely got that ability. They're a little bit light now in midfield with the injuries, and that's acknowledged. But certainly in attacking areas, they've got 6 really decent options, and they can all interchange as well.
Yeah, the attacking minutes for Newcastle are all over the place. Because I mentioned...
apologies, mate. I didn't even mention Alanga. He started in midweek. They've got loads of options up there.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with Alanga, I think he is a bit of a flop that's gone under the radar somewhat, really, for the money they spent for him. I think, is it 1 assist for Newcastle this season? Great, yeah. So, but I'm a bit surprised with that, because in the game at St James's Park, I thought he absolutely ripped us apart, to be honest. And then it just hasn't pushed on from that, which I am very surprised by. But yeah, I know I mentioned Gordon earlier, because it's been over a year since his last open play goal in the Premier League, which is a bit of a mad stat in itself, really, for a player of his quality. But no, I hear what you're saying about the dark arts and looking to stifle Liverpool. When you said about Dan Burn, I immediately have visions back to Alexis McAllister marking him at Wembley.
It wasn't ideal, that was it?
No, it wasn't ideal. And I'd like to think that might have had I'd like to think it might have had a rethink, but then we've seen McAllister marking every centre-back this season, so not sure it will. But that's why I think... Just to quickly, like, say for last week with Bournemouth, for example, like when the throwing got given, I'll be honest with you, I just sat back and was like, just get on with it, because I just knew what was going to come. When Newcastle get corners, I just hope, you talk about atmosphere, you talk about European atmosphere. When Newcastle get a corner or a set piece, if everyone on the ground looks at that penalty area and sees McAllister marking Dan Burn, you don't want that sense of inevitability. And that's why I just think there's got to be a bit of common sense, because I know Van Dijk doesn't really go centre half, for example, but Konate, for example, I know we'll talk about team news in a bit, but just have someone capable of marking Dan Burn.
Even a big midfielder rather than the smallest one we have would,
yes.
would be a difference. Yeah, what we'll do, we'll wrap up this part of the Newcastle show. We'll go to a quick break, after which we will go through the Liverpool team. There's plenty of team news after the press conference if you haven't seen it already, and then there are discussions to be had, such as who is playing at right back. It could be one of us, given the current state of Liverpool's team. Yeah, have a quick break, and then we'll be back with the Liverpool team news. See you in a sec.
Hello everyone, welcome. Thanks for joining me. I'm here to tell you about this incredible giveaway that we are doing for our legend subscribers on Redmen Plus. This is the Craig Johnson signed Crown Paint shirt. It is absolutely glorious. Every single month we give away something to our legends on redmenplus.com. It's a great way of showing your support for the channel. It's a great way to get closer to us as well, because you'll be in the Discord group and there's loads of other benefits, merchandise, discounts, all that type of stuff. But the big one for me would be this. It would be the opportunity to get into the prize draw for these incredible signed items. Craig Johnson Crown Paint shirt signed by the Liverpool legend. Join up this January as a legend on redmenplus.com. Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to get involved and win that signed shirt, you've got a couple of days. The draw will take place early next week. Just download the Redmen Plus app, subscribe as a legend subscriber, or go to our website and subscribe as a legend subscriber, and you'll be in that draw, which takes place early next week. And at the end of every single month, we do one of those as well. So get yourselves involved. We've got some great signed stuff already in the can, and plenty more to come as well from some absolute icons of Liverpool. Right then, let's talk about the Reds. Team news wise, just to fill everyone in, if you haven't heard the press conference yet, it is available on the app if you want to go and check it out after this to hear what Armstrong had to say in full. But the main news in terms of injuries, then obviously we know Jeremy Frimpong's out. The relative good news is that the manager said it isn't as bad as first feared. So that looks like a week's one rather than a significant one. But obviously he is unavailable rather, as is Joe Gomez. Obviously add that to Conor Bradley being out all season, and Liverpool have got an issue at right back. The positives: Curtis Jones back training. He missed the game midweek. He was ill. He is now available. And Ibu Konate's back after his compassionate leave. He's trained yesterday and he will train today. So it looks like Konate is back in contention. And again, given Liverpool's current centre back issues, he's probably straight back into the team. So yeah, let's start there then, because obviously Konate and Van Dijk we would now expect to be a centre half, given that Ibu's back. Obviously Alisson will be in goal. The first questions come at both full-back positions. Would I be wrong starting a left-back first, just to presume that Kirkes is straight back in. He tends to go Kirkes against more pacey wingers anyway, Chris. You know, Robbo was fine. Maybe that was a really good Andy Robertson game. That's perfect. You know, possession and not too much going the other way. My assumption is probably Kirkes comes straight back in to deal with one of Alanga, Murphy, Barnes, Gordon, whoever plays over there.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense. I wonder whether Kirkes almost got a little bit overawed by the return to Bournemouth last week. Just it can happen. It can happen. He's a young lad going back to a club that he knows so well, and almost they played really against his strengths, if that makes sense. But they just know him inside now, so that's why they will have done it.
He tried to wind him up as well, and they were little slaps on the head, little pushes at the ball. They really got in his head, and you could tell it got to him a little bit as well.
That's what I mean by knowing him inside and out. Therefore, they'll have got the better of him. But I think that's not a concern long term. He's been very good recently, and I very much expect him to come back in. I did mention Alanga. I do think he had a bit of a torrid time up at St James's Park, Kirkes, and especially for the Bruno Guimaraes goal as well, deciding not to jump and just ducking under the ball. But
not ideal.
I am convinced that he's been a lot better in recent weeks. He's growing into that Liverpool shirt at left back. So yes, very much expect him to come against Newcastle, and I think he's someone he is impressing me more and more as the weeks go on.
Yeah, and then right back is the obvious one then, John. Like, I say obvious one, it's the obvious question. It's not obvious at all who's going to play there. I've got written down on my notes, potential right back for Liverpool tomorrow are Calvin Ramsey, although the manager did recently say, you know, he hasn't been playing because he's got better options, including midfielders, so that he's probably actually fourth on my list in terms of likelihood. It's Endo, who played there off the bench against Karabakh and did okay. Again, different type of game, but did all right. It's then Dominic Szoboszlai or Curtis Jones. I know there's been mad suggesting Andy Robertson being over. I don't think Liverpool would do that. So 2 questions, and I'll ask you both of them, and you can answer however you want. Mm-hmm. Who would you play at right back, and who do you think the manager is going to play at right back tomorrow night?
First one of those quite easy. Second one, Jesus. I actually think maybe it's just slightly wishful thinking, just because we haven't seen him for half the season, kind of thing. I think Endo was really good. I wouldn't be adverse to seeing them. He impressed me way more sort of than I thought against Karabakh. But I agree with you. I do think it's a slightly different game and different level, if you like, in terms of opposition and stuff. For me, I think it's probably a straight choice between sort of Curtis Jones and Szoboszlai. Personally, I would like to see Jones there because I feel much more comfortable with Szoboszlai in midfield, just in terms of what he offers. I actually think Jones offers a lot of the same things in midfield. So, in terms of maybe actually sort of like actual data and numbers and stuff, it doesn't really matter too much. But I think the manager obviously favours putting Szoboszlai out there, just in terms of getting up and down the wing, and obviously in terms of sort of the players that they'll be coming up against, kind of thing, like the pace. So I'm leaning towards that he'll probably go Szoboszlai. My preference would be that he puts Jones there, and then if need be, he's sort of got the option of changing things in terms of his midfield. He can move players around if he brings other players on and off, kind of thing. Yeah.
So what are you thinking, Chris, on the right back?
I would definitely go Curtis Jones because I think moving Szoboszlai out of midfield to me is a little bit mad. Just because how good he's been. Liverpool's player of the season by some considerable margin. The impact he's had in forward positions recently, central positions as well. His energy is unrivaled at the club in that position. I totally understand what you mean in terms of I think Slot prefers him out there. But when I'm at the games and there's a positional change or formation change and I see Szoboszlai come out to right back, I almost just sense like a groan from the crowd, just thinking, he's up right back again. And when you have your best player so far this season in a position that he is therefore less effective in, that is really frustrating because Szoboszlai, I just think he's in that real kind of mood at the moment where I said earlier this season, I want him to contribute more going forward. I think he's in the mood now where he knows he can do that, where he knows how to do that. And I know you can say, look, the set pieces will still be there, the free kicks will still be there, but no, I would be playing Jones at right back. I hope Slot plays Jones at right back because that gives Szoboszlai his freedom. But I guess you're thinking about the pace of Barnes, you're thinking about the pace of Gordon, Elanga, Murphy's deliveries. I know Murphy's more on the right hand side for Newcastle, therefore the left back. But as I say, when I see Szoboszlai out of position in that regard, I get what you mean about Jones still being able to do things, but I think the drop-off, maybe drop-off is a bit harsh, but the difference from Szoboszlai down to Jones in those key areas, I do think is quite big.
For what it's worth, I think he will pick Szoboszlai at right back. And I've been adamant that shouldn't be happening at all this season, but I think he should play right back tomorrow. It will be my choice, just because for whoever's over there is going to be quick. And also, and this depends a little bit on the injuries, and you're taking a little bit of a gamble, but you're taking a gamble on I think they might play a back five, which might make it easier in midfield, but also without Joe Linton and potentially without Bruno, you might not need as much physicality in the middle of the pitch. I'd be fine with Curtis. Again, it depends how much of the ball you think you're going to have, but if they're going to play counter-attack, does Curtis quite have the legs to get back as much, and the energies to get up and down as much as Szoboszlai does? So I think if he plays Sobo, and then his midfield is, definitely Gravenberch, and then two of Jones, McAllister, maybe Florian Wirtz. But none of this is ideal. No. It's the best of a bad situation. I would be very concerned, Chris, with Endo or Jones up against the pace of, and it probably almost certainly will be Anthony Gordon. I think, Gordon, for some reason, again, it's not for some reason, he's a Liverpool supporter, he's got a point to prove when he plays Liverpool. He tends to have decent games against us. And would that not worry you if it's Curtis against Gordon defensively? On the ball, I see your point, and moving to Szoboszlai is not great, but that matchup in terms of just the pure pace would give me kittens.
I suppose I was thinking more on the possession side.
Yeah, gotcha.
Really, in terms of thinking, how much would you need that, especially if Newcastle are going to play a back five or looking to maybe hit on the counter attack? I suppose in my mind, I think there's a potential for almost like a back three in possession as well. Maybe, I know, look, I've been the first to say how frustrated I've been with Kerkez not being allowed to play his natural game this year, but I think almost with a midfielder at right back who will inevitably at some part of the game want to move into a midfield position, I think Kerkez might have to also be prepared to do that a little bit less in terms of going on in that way. But I get what you mean. I don't think Jones is overly slow compared to Szoboszlai, but I think what you get from Szoboszlai, and we've seen that a fair bit recently, he's more tenacious in terms of tracking back. He's more combative in that mould. So, yeah, I probably just have to suck it up and just accept it.
Neither of them are ideal. When you lose your three right backs, it's never going to be ideal.
I think as well, wasn't there the quote in the week, because obviously every press conference slot has been asked about transfers, about the right backs, about centre backs. I myself asked him about centre backs the other day and obviously got the expected result. But was it the quote in midweek something like, we don't buy 12 right backs or 9 strikers or things like that? That's not what we're asking. We're just asking, and I'm sure the fan base would agree with this, we're only asking because there's surely someone in the world of football on a short-term basis, maybe that isn't playing for their club or whatever, that would be able to fill that role of which there is a very significant lack of options. For example, Man City buying Mark Gahey. Ruben Diaz is probably back for the game next week at Anfield, but that they've chosen him also for short and long term because they know Gahey's going to be a fixture at the club now. And I'm not asking for a particular long-term one. I'm just asking for someone that can do well and allow others to flourish while filling a problem position.
It just isn't the MO. I'm with you. I can't believe they haven't signed a defender, but this is where we are. Whoever it is, if it is going to be one, and Slot kind of alluded maybe, but maybe not today, it's not going to be for the weekend. They're going to have to suck it and see over the next few days. This kind of tags into the midfield question and forwards. We can kind of lump this into one, John. Mm-hmm. So Ekitike plays, Gravenberch will play and go back into midfield. Yeah. Salah, I think, will go again. I think I'd be shocked if Salah didn't play. And then Florian Wirtz will play. It just depends on where. The manager's now got to figure out then. The last remaining questions are, if Wirtz is left wing, he's got to pick 2 midfielders. If Wirtz is in midfield, he's got to pick a left winger and a midfielder. Again, the fact Gakpo went off in midweek was given a little bit of a rest, maybe suggest the manager might go back to Cody Gakpo, or stick with Cody Gakpo on the left. Would you agree with that? Probably what he's going to do?
Yeah, I think sort of just moving on from the Szoboszlai point into the sort of the forwards and stuff. Yeah, I agree. I think Gakpo, Ekitike, Salah up front for me, and I think Szoboszlai maybe sort of part of the case for Szoboszlai right back, if you like, is it sort of helps back Mo up in terms of like, you know, it gives him someone, you know, if you think back maybe sort of 3 or 4 seasons having Henderson out there sort of covering that right flank kind of thing and doing the shuttles and stuff, you get a lot of that. I think what sort of limited we've seen of sort of, you know, it was almost a front four against Karabakh in terms of like where it's Gakpo, Ekitike and Salah. It was very fluid. I think a lot of the criticisms, if you like, sort of the front three going back to the start of the season was that it felt very much like those lads, and then Salah was sort of on the periphery and just sort of doing his own thing. Like I say, sort of what limited we've seen of them as a forward, he looks a lot more sort of in tune with the dynamic they're going for, and also Wirtz looks much more in rhythm in terms of being able to go, okay, well, I've got 3 options I can pass to, so should I pass to him and whatever, and we recycle it, or you know, kind of thing. And I think that's, you know, for sort of where we are in the season, you've just got to go with your strengths. You know, there's always sort of the case, I guess, which is where you started with sort of like, you know, do you maybe keep a Gakpo back or keep a Wirtz back to sort of rotate and sort of give yourself the option? I don't think we've really got that luxury at the minute. I think it's probably much better for us to maybe have the game won on 60, 70, if that's the way the game goes, and then be looking to maybe sort of see a game out for 20 minutes kind of thing, than it is to be sort of going, right, we're gonna flip it and, you know, we'll do this. Like, I'd much rather see Ingamo come on sort of 75 for a Gakpo kind of thing than I would start to, you know, maybe see him start and or you know, Wirtz is out there and he's trying to move things around.
That's one thing Liverpool have lost the art of this year, isn't it, really? Because last year, you mentioned about the going 2-0 up and seeing games out. That was a hallmark, especially in the early months of last season under Slot, where we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know the style of play. It was very much a go 2-0 up, and then if we don't score again, it's not really a problem because we're confident in shutting up shop at the back. And that, even early on in the season, just felt something Liverpool moved away from, really. And I don't know about you. I know you could say, oh, you want to score 4, 5, 6, 7, but 2-0 and a comfortable end to the game is not bad for the heart rate. So I just want to
be very good with that.
Can I just throw in as well? I couldn't really work into the points I was trying to make, but I also just think Salah's due a goal in the league.
He's due a win. Liverpool don't, or even a point. Liverpool don't great with most play, but I do think I think that kind of ship sail. I think he is back in the team. If it is, do we all agree it's going to be Gakpo, Ekitike, Salah?
Yeah, I think the points that you guys make about Szoboszlai into right back, which obviously I didn't disagree with, but I just wasn't a preference. Yeah, I think that does open up in terms of the midfield and keeping Wirtz in that role. I do feel happier and more comfortable in terms of his link-up play with Kerkez as opposed to Gakpo's link-up play with Kerkez, but ultimately with the options available, I think Wirtz in that midfield role, especially if Newcastle are going to be weaker in midfield, might free him up to have joy in that regard. So, yeah, Gakpo, Ekitike, Salah.
And then Gravenberch, Wirtz,
Maka.
So Curtis on the bench. Or he's playing right back for you.
Yeah, sorry. I'm getting confused now. Sorry.
So for you that Jones at right back and Szoboszlai in midfield.
Yeah. So then that would
Maka's on the bench.
That would probably, yeah. I mean, also because I'm not entirely sure Maka's in terms of legs still. I know obviously he's got 2 goals in the week and stuff, but just in terms of his ability to play 2 games in what 72 hours or whatever.
The bench in theory isn't great yet, but it does feel a little bit stronger with that, you know, compared to what it was midweek when it, you know, in your situation, for example, you have got Jones and McAllister on the bench. Not ideal in terms of forward options, but you know, Rio and Federico Chiesa are on there a little bit as well, so it's a little bit stronger because Newcastle will have depth on their bench as well. Right then, what we'll do, we'll get some score predictions at the end of the show. Before we do, let's just look at the context of the game and then, of course, again, what's happening elsewhere around the Premier League this weekend. Liverpool now are firmly in a battle to finish in. I'm going to keep saying, everyone keeps talking about top 4. It's top 5.
It's top 5.
Liverpool, it's top 5. The fifth, unless like Spanish teams go on like and win every game and English teams lose every game. The fact that 5 English teams got through and stuff like that, I think we're okay.
Well, every English team got through in their respective competitions, didn't they?
So the coefficient's fine. So as it stands, Man United are 4th on 38 points, Chelsea are 5th on 37 points, Liverpool are 6th on 36 points. As it stands, on the outside looking in, just behind us are Fulham on 34, Brentford and Newcastle both on 33. So yeah, for what it's worth, a Newcastle win at Anfield would take them above Liverpool and put them right back in the mix as well, going back to the conversation we had earlier. Although they're 9th, they're not a million miles away. So with that being said, and we know how big a game it is for us, we are now in the stage of the campaign, unfortunately, gents. You're looking for favours elsewhere, and you're looking for other teams to do you some solids. Chelsea host West Ham, and West Ham have had a little bit of a resurgence, Chris, but you'd expect Chelsea to win that one. And again, Man United hosting Fulham, that's a tough game. And Man United have come off the back of, they beat City and they beat Arsenal, probably games where they were the underdog. There will be more expectation on them to beat Fulham on Sunday, but I think all three at home, of these competitors for this top 5 position, we've got the toughest game. You don't want to rely on West Ham or Fulham for favours, and you're probably not going to get one.
No, I very much agree with that. I don't want to go into with the kind of doom mentality, but at the moment, for me, I don't know whether this is a bit of recency after the Bournemouth one and just how kind of down we all felt after that, but it feels a little bit difficult at the moment, just with the way Liverpool's Premier League form is, to justify finishing above both Chelsea and United, if that makes sense. Just because I think Chelsea are better than what people give them credit for. Rafinha has had ultimately a very good start there. United, the big question with them this weekend is, you've performed brilliantly against Manchester City, you performed brilliantly against Arsenal. Can you now perform equally so against Fulham at home, where there won't be maybe the kind of ferocious atmosphere, the rivalry sense? So that's where we might learn a little bit more. I think for Liverpool, it is very much a case of urgency and getting back on track as soon as possible, because you're talking about relying on favours. You can't do that for 4 months. It is very much about Liverpool getting their own act together, starting with this weekend against Newcastle. And the squad don't need telling about the importance of finishing in the Champions League places, for finances, for bringing players in, for everything, for competition. So, yeah, while I'm saying it's difficult to justify at the moment, hopefully the next few weeks we'll see that turnaround and Liverpool emphasis on really putting themselves back in the driving seat.
Do we think United and Chelsea will both win? Fulham and West Ham, respectively? I think United is trickier.
I think Chelsea win. I think Chelsea beat West Ham.
Agreed.
I think Fulham will, because Fulham are exactly in bad shape themselves.
They're playing well, mate.
And I think that could be a lot trickier. It's interesting, the whole Harry Wilson thing, looking more likely to leave on a free transfer as well. But no, that's what I mean. United have had these two amazing results. How many times have we seen with United? They've always had, as a result, against City in them. So that's what I mean from a United perspective. Can they perform and also prove? It's about them proving to themselves, really. Obviously, I hope they don't. But I think Chelsea will win, arguably, quite comfortably. United, I can see being quite tight.
It would be one of those. It would be very modern-day Manchester United to beat Manchester City, beat Arsenal, and lose to Fulham. Like that. These have been the kind of games, unfortunately, for them.
I'm a bit gutted that Adama's gone to West Ham, because it just felt. I know he barely played, but like that's he's because I think he set up Iwobi for the winner at Old Trafford the other year. So that's just the kind of game. I think if I was a United fan late on and you weren't winning particularly comfortably and Adama comes on, but obviously that's not an option anymore.
Let's rely on Harry Wilson. I'm with Chris on that. United have always done well actually in the bigger games recently when they haven't had to have much of the ball. They haven't had to work through teams. I don't know exactly how Fulham are going to play, but yeah, you'd expect Chelsea to win comfortably, you'd think, although West Ham are decent. But it is mad that we're hoping Fulham take points off Manchester United in this. That is not the season we envisaged, but here we are, John.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a tight league at the minute. I mean, I was looking through it before, and it's like, I think of all the teams at the minute, if you go a bit further down, it's like Spurs are sort of 8 or 9 back from relegation, but also 8 or 9 down from being in the Champions League places. It's mad. It's such a compressed sort of mid-table, basically anywhere down from City, down to about 15th or 16th. Yeah. I disagree slightly. I think Fulham might give United a bit of a surprise. I do think possibly maybe because the football isn't as sexy, if you like, kind of thing, that Marco Silva's one of the managers in the league that goes a bit under the radar in terms of what he does. Like the they seem to have a wobble every season, a bit like Brentford when they were under Frank, where it looks like, oh, maybe this is the year, the 16th, they haven't won in 5 kind of thing. And then you get to the end of the season and they finished like sort of 8th, 9th, 10th. Do you know what I mean? Like he's really good at sort of like putting together runs where they go on a bit of a spree. And he's really good, I think, at capitalising. Just speaking to what you were saying about Harry Wilson, he's really good at capitalising on players' form and stuff as well. I think it's a different game for United. I think they've had sort of the new manager bounce around Carrick. And don't get me wrong, like I think Carrick, again, like, you know, obviously a lot of banter around United always and managers and Gary Neville and all the rest of it. But I think a lot of what Carrick did at Borough was really underrated. You know, he is a good coach. So I think they'll play well. I just think, you know, I'm looking at it and thinking much more of maybe of a draw. I could see it being drop points. I don't necessarily know if they'll get beat by Fulham, maybe.
Is it after? But yeah, Fulham could go above Liverpool if they win and we know. So that's where Liverpool are, Chris. Go on.
Yeah, no, I just want to make a point. I'm expecting the top 3 to be the top 3 come the end, but the extent of Watkins' hamstring injury, if it is a hamstring injury from last night, will be very intriguing. It actually is quite good timing for them to got Tammy Abraham just to maybe throw straight in there, but I'm intrigued to see to what extent that might harm Villa in the long term. As I say, very much expecting the top 3 to be the top 3. But that is one to watch.
They've got a 10-point gap on 6. They should.
Yeah.
They
should.
They should, but you never know. You never know. So with that being said, then Liverpool going back to Newcastle. It's going to be a tough game. History suggests, of this season, Liverpool's results haven't always been great, and Liverpool versus Newcastle, they've been tight. You know, the margin of scores in these last games. Obviously, there was the 2-0 at Anfield, and then the 4-2 back in January. But even that was close. You know, they're relatively close game. It's usually the odd goal or here or there, John. And given that both teams looking pretty even at this moment in time, you probably are expecting another close game. Is that fair to say? And if so, maybe score prediction as well?
Yeah, I mean, my head says I think it'll be a score draw, and certainly most of the better markets seem to think that. But my heart will never let me predict that, particularly at Anfield. So I think we win 2-1. But I think, as you say, I think it's a very close game, and I think it's very, you know, going back to what you were saying about your heart rate before. I think on 85, I've got less hair and no nails.
You know, the 4-2 you mentioned, was that the one with 7 XG?
It was the one where Salah has to score a very late penalty. I think. Kind of takes a little bit of a dive.
Yes, that was like, I think Liverpool were the highest XG ever recorded in the Premier League in that game or something. But
and they still managed to get a set piece goal, funny enough.
Yes, yeah. Very much in agreement. I think it will be maybe a bit of a tense watch at times, just because at the moment in the Premier League, it feels tough again to argue where Liverpool are going to keep a clean sheet. Especially if, as you say, they play Burn, they play Botman, they play Thiaw, real set-piece threat. But ultimately, I'm not going to come on here and not predict Liverpool to win. So I'll go 2-1.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a tough game. I think Newcastle's away form is what it tips me more towards being a little bit more confident. But you are right. I think Liverpool will win by the odd goal, and I don't think they'll keep a clean sheet. So yeah, you're looking at a 2-1 or 3-2 or something like that. I do think it's going to be a real tough one. But again, they've had 2 wins on the road. But teams have had a bit of comfort coming to Anfield in recent weeks. You know, they drew with Wolves, didn't they, last time out a 0-0. They probably could have lost that one as well, to be honest. Yeah. That killed a lot of people's last man standings. I
was going to say, I'm in a last man standing this week. I think a load got knocked out by Brentford last week, and a few were Arsenal. I was going to choose Villa before Watkins' injury, and I'm like, okay, what do I do now? I wasn't United and Chelsea, the 2 ones. I'm like, I can't trust.
I think I trust Chelsea.
I think Chelsea's the outstanding one. I think, yeah.
But yeah, not ideal at all. Let us know again if you're watching this on YouTube in the comment section your score predictions, and as well, who would you pick at right back? If you're watching this as a Redmen Plus subscriber on the app, or you're listening to us as a podcast, please do get in touch with the social channels. And again, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Who should be at right back? Give us your score predictions as well. Ahead of the game then, just to let you guys know, there will be a watch along for the game. I'm back in the hot seat. We'll be live from 6:40 UK time. The game kicks off at 8 o'clock, so please do come and join us. That one, like I say, is available on the YouTube channel or over on the Redmen Plus app. Go and download the app right now, and you'll get all the content in there. Again, it's a free app. You don't have to pay to get the app. All of our free content is housed in there, And then if you do want to subscribe for more stuff, you can do it from there. But yeah, go and check it out. It's gone really well. The feedback's been good. And we have just put a new update up as well on the app, getting all the features that you guys requested, including picture-in-picture, the podcast ability to go back to a podcast and listen to it in the same place. I don't know why we didn't have that in the first place, to be honest with you. But listen, we're new to this, we're living and learning, we're doing it, we're listening to you. So yeah, do go and get that as well. A couple, Just Memes says he thinks it's going to be a 1-1, and Ruddy has gone for a 2-2 as well. Yeah, there's lots of...
John Ruddy.
I don't think it's John Ruddy. If it is John Ruddy, I don't think it is, but it might be. You never know. Yeah, and Kathy Jones also says a draw. So yeah, there's not a lot of optimism. Fingers crossed Liverpool can prove you guys wrong by winning, not by losing, by the way. Absolutely go and win the game, but I do think it's going to be tight. So yeah, thanks very much to Chris and to John. Thanks for you guys for watching or listening to the show. We'll catch you for the Newcastle watch along. See you there.